Donald Trump has been formally arrested in the US state of Georgia after surrendering to law enforcement authorities there. His motorcade arrived at the Fulton County Jail, where he was booked on more than a dozen racketeering and conspiracy charges. They all relate to an alleged attempt to overturn the 2020 election in Georgia. In a historic first, a mugshot was taken of a former US president, which he then posted on social media. Trump was released on a $200,000 bond. It's his fourth arrest since April. Trump says the charges against him are politically motivated, and he slammed the Georgia case before leaving Atlanta.
What has taken place here is a travesty of justice. We did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong, and everybody knows it. I've never had such support, and that goes with the other ones too. What they're doing is election interference. They're trying to interfere with an election. There's never been anything like it in our country before. This is their way of campaigning.
Now, Donald Trump is a man of many firsts. I asked Boris Forman, a political scientist from the Bard College here in Berlin, what the police photo or mugshot will do for Donald Trump's image in the eyes of American voters.
Well, I mean, it's not a unity. There are very different voters, and those who supported him before will support him still, and probably even more. His polls have been up since the beginning of the year by over 10%, so the support within the Republican Party is still strong. Whereas for the Democrats, of course, I guess it adds to a picture that has been relatively clear before. The decisive point will be for the independent voters and moderate voters. Who will they vote in the presidential campaign if Trump is really able to clinch the presidential nomination?
Boris, potential jail time aside, in a strictly political sense, is there anything that can really hurt Donald Trump at this point?
I mean, we've been using the term, or some journalists have been using the term Teflon Don 7 years ago. And it seems true that somehow he's able to escape any accusation really so far. Yes, now there's 4 different indictments, but at the same time, of course, there is the political campaign. There's always the danger of him being able to exploit this as, a political victim, basically, of the system. But it hurts the justice system overall, and it deepens the democratic crisis that the US has been in for quite a while now.
Yeah, just on that political victim point, I'm not sure what you might make of Donald Trump's expression in the mugshot, but what do you make of his move to post the mugshot online himself? Where do you find that in the political playbook?
Yeah, I mean, some journalists have pointed out that some of the other defendants have smiled and have showed defiance in the mugshots that they had taken. Trump looks much more serious, but I'm not a psychologist and I'm not going to do any interpretation of the image itself. I think overall it's an attempt to stay in charge of the narrative. He knew that this mugshot would come out anyways, and he could use it now to stage himself again as a political victim, but also to re-enter Twitter and the Twitter sphere.
Is there any sense, Boris, that even Republican voters' patience is being tested by images like this, by moments like this?
You wonder. I guess we would need a poll now after the mugshot has been taken. I think the political circus is very fast, and in 2 weeks' time, probably nobody will talk about it again. I mean, many newspapers during the Trump administration had tried to keep track of his lies and misstatements and so on. It's nothing that seems to shock Trump voters. I think there's a much deeper underlying issue that we don't have the time to discuss here, but I think it's more of a loyalty that's heartfelt. It's an emotional loyalty rather than a rational loyalty.
What about financial loyalty? Trump surrendered and paid $200,000 bond, a relatively small amount for a billionaire. Is there any sign that this turmoil is affecting his ability, crucially, to raise money for his 2024 campaign?
Well, he just paid a part of this himself. Much of the legal costs, most of the legal costs have been paid by his by a super PAC, and those who have been trying to support Trump after what he described as a political witch hunt and so on. Yes, he's been very successful in trying to use his own position and raise money, and he's also, as we've seen in the political debate at the GOP, that there's basically nobody in the Republican Party that's willing to stand up to him. So I think there's a deep problem here, and either the GOP or American democracy will suffer in the long term.
Boris Foreman from the Bard College here in Berlin. Thank you so much for your input.
Thank you.
Well, for more on this, I'm now joined by Dominik Tolksdorf, a US policy expert with the German Council on Foreign Relations. Welcome to DW. So, what will this photograph, this mugshot that we've seen, do for Donald Trump in the eyes of American voters, but particularly Republicans?
Yeah, good afternoon. I think Donald Trump tries to take advantage of these charges against him now by turning it around and he has mentioned this before. This is a political witch hunt against him, and he tries to mobilize his voters even more, especially the MAGA base, and that will of course energize not only himself but also his base.
Tell us this, what do you make of his move to actually post the mugshot online himself?
I think it's just like he wants to symbolize, or he wants to show that he's a victim of a political trial against him, and he just wants to show how much he's humiliated, or how much the sort of Democratic or the Democrats try to orchestrate a trial against him, and how much he's a victim of these attempts.
Now, potential jail time aside, in a, let's call it, political sense, is there anything that can actually really hurt Trump at this point? Is there any sense that Republican voters' patience is being tested by images like this mugshot that we've seen?
I don't think so. I mean, I think his base is clearly behind him. I don't think this is going to change anything. I think for the overall Republican Party, that is a problem, because I think this will actually strengthen him even more. And for his contenders within the Republican Party, that is a problem, because he now gets all the attention again, and he can sort of claim that he's a victim. And I think for the Republican Party itself, it is a problem, because I think a lot of people in the Republican Party, at least among the strategists and the elites, they try to get rid of him, but this will even strengthen his position among the MAGA base even more, and take away the attention from other candidates that might be running or that are already running against him.
Is there really anything that could actually swing or at least result in a change among Republican voters? Is there somewhere that, if it results in a conviction, for example, would that possibly change his support base?
I don't think so, but of course it would have legal implications, of course, in the end for him, because as long as he's not able, or his lawyers are not able to get the case transferred to a federal court, he faces a problem, because this is a state case in a state court, and if he's really convicted of a crime, and if he's really elected president, he wouldn't even have the chance to pardon himself. And I think this is more the legal problem that he faces, and that could, of course, lead to a lot of problems in case he's really elected. But I don't think this will sort of distract his voters. I think they don't really, a lot of his sort of true supporters don't really believe that there is an impartial and fair justice system in place, and I don't think this will change their minds.
Now, Trump surrendered and paid a $200,000 bond, relatively small for a billionaire. Now, is there any sign any of this turmoil is affecting his ability to raise money for his 2024 campaign?
Yeah, I think he tries to take advantage of this case again. I mean, this is the first thing that he did. He asked for more money. And I think this is actually, it might be a pretty successful move from his side, because he has shown in the past that he's pretty successful raising money from small donors and, mobilizing really every sort of families, etc. And he has a huge advantage over his other contenders. If you look at, for example, Ron DeSantis, he's not able to actually mobilize a lot of small donors, and Donald Trump is able to do that. He's shown that in the past, and I think he will use these cases now to even mobilize more money for his campaign, which is, of course, on the other hand, extremely expensive. But I think he can be sure that he gets at least the funds from small donors.
All right, we'll leave it there. Dominic Talkstor from the German Council on Foreign Relations. Thanks for your analysis.
Thank you.